On the distant planet Croak, a place far removed from the hustle and bustle of the rest of the galaxy, the alien species that called it home had always prided themselves on their superiority. Croak's inhabitants were technologically advanced, their ships gliding effortlessly through the stars, and their weapons so powerful that they saw little need for anything beyond mere dominance. For centuries, they believed themselves to be untouchable, the undisputed rulers of the galactic food chain. This belief in their own invincibility had shaped their society in ways that no other species could understand. They were a proud people, and when they looked at others, they saw little more than ants scurrying about without purpose. Earth, a small, insignificant planet in the corner of the galaxy, was nothing more than a curiosity to them. Its people, they thought, were primitive and weak. This arrogance, however, would be their undoing. Commander Elena Hayes, a skilled and determined diplomat, had been chosen for an important mission. She was sent to Croak as part of Earth's effort to establish peaceful trade relations, hoping to create a bridge between two vastly different worlds. Elna had worked for months, carefully crafting proposals, preparing speeches, and learning about Croak's complex political system. She believed that humanity could find a way to coexist with the Croak, despite their differences. It was an ambitious goal, but Elena was determined. As she stepped off the shuttle and onto Croak's surface, she felt a sense of purpose. She knew this mission wasn't just about trade, it was about establishing Earth's place in the wider galaxy, showing that they were more than just a backwater planet. But the Croak had their own plans. Not all factions of Croak's leadership shared the desire for diplomacy. A radical group, who saw Earth's humble beginnings as a weakness, believed that allowing humans to gain a foothold in the galaxy was a mistake. They considered Elena Hayes to be nothing more than a pawn, a symbol of human naivety. They were not interested in diplomacy. They had no patience for peace talks. To them, humans were little more than a nuisance, one they could easily erase without consequence. The Croak's leaders had underestimated the depth of human resolve. One quiet night, as Elena sat in a conference room, reviewing the documents for the next day's talks, a shadow moved across the room. The guards, who were supposed to protect her, were far too distracted. The assassin, a member of the rogue faction, slipped in quietly and struck with deadly precision. Elena didn't stand a chance. The humans, so often seen as peaceful, now had a tragic martyr, a symbol of their failed attempt at diplomacy. The assassin made his way out of the building just as silently as he had entered, leaving no trace of his presence. To the Croak, this was nothing more than a brief distraction. They thought it would be an incident easily brushed aside, a simple act of violence that would be forgotten within days. After all, humans were weak, weren't they? The Croak expected a swift apology from their leaders, a few diplomatic gestures, and everything would return to normal. But they had gravely miscalculated. When Earth received the news of Commander Hayes' death, the response was immediate. It was not what anyone, especially the Croak, had expected. There was no quiet mourning, no pleas for justice or calls for negotiations. No, humanity was not about to sit idly by. The news spread like wildfire across Earth. The entire world, from the political elites to the common people, was united by a single powerful emotion: rage. Earth would not let this stand. The leaders of Croak, far from realizing the depth of their mistake, thought they had silenced humanity. But the truth was far more dangerous. Humanity would not be silenced. They would retaliate. In ways the Croak could never imagine. Commander Hayes' death would be the spark, and Earth's response would be like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. The Croak thought they had crushed a simple diplomat. They had no idea that they had ignited the wrath of a species that had fought for survival on their own planet for millennia. They had no idea that this one, isolated death would be the catalyst for something much larger, something far more dangerous, something that would shake the galaxy to its very core. The assassination of Commander Elena Hayes rocked Earth to its core. Across the globe, shockwaves rippled through every nation. News of her death spread within hours, sparking outrage in every corner of the world. People gathered in the streets, demanding justice, their voices rising as one. But the Krolk, so accustomed to their dominance, had already made a grave mistake. They thought humanity would simply accept an apology and move on. To them, Earth was just another insignificant planet in a universe full of powerful beings, easily brushed aside. The Krolk government offered a shallow apology, hoping that would quell the anger that had started to spread. But they had no idea what they were dealing with. On Earth, the response was not what anyone expected. The leaders of the galaxy's diplomatic council, composed of numerous species who had long been used to managing the affairs of the stars, looked at the situation with indifference. "It's a political matter," they said. "Just another diplomatic incident, nothing more." But back on Earth, the story was different. President Martha Grayson, standing before the entire world, made an announcement that sent a chill through the galaxy. Her voice, calm yet filled with unshakable determination, echoed across every screen. "We will not stand by while our people are murdered. The death of Commander Elena Hayes will not be forgotten. We will ensure that justice is done." The weight of her words was more than just a political statement. It was a call to arms, a rallying cry that united the people of Earth in a way no one had seen before. Earth was a planet known for its diversity, its fractured governments, and its varied interests. But on that day, something changed. Earth was no longer just a group of nations. It was a united force, ready to act in defense of its own. The Krolk, however, still did not understand the depth of the situation. They believed that Earth's anger would fade, that the humans would be content with a few words and a small show of force. But they were wrong. Earth did not send a single fleet or army as the Krolk had expected. Instead, they did something no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. They mobilized everything. Earth's government, working in unison with its military, scientific community, and every branch of society, began preparing a campaign that would make any conventional war look like child's play. It wasn't a war of armies or fleets. It was a war of intelligence, strategy, and precision. Earth would not rely on brute force. They would make the Krolk feel a terror far more insidious. Every corner of Earth's resources was directed toward one goal: the complete infiltration of Krolk systems. The best minds from Earth's tech companies and research facilities worked together in an unthinkable effort to break through Krolk's defenses. New weapons were designed, but they weren't the kind that could be seen from afar. These were the tools of subtlety, precision, and calculated chaos, tools that would break Krolk's systems from the inside out. What the galaxy did not see coming was the coordination. The Krolk had underestimated Earth's ability to act in unity. Humanity was not just a species of soldiers, scientists, and thinkers. They were innovators. They had learned the art of working together in ways that no alien race had mastered. Earth's plan didn't just involve sending troops or ships. It involved the most efficient, precise, and interconnected operation the galaxy had ever known. Every country on Earth, every individual, was a part of it. And soon, every person in the galaxy would feel the consequences. As Earth's preparations began to unfold, the galaxy began to feel an unsettling tension. Ships from every corner of the universe began to shift in position, watching Earth closely. There was no grand show of military power, no sudden flare-ups of space battles. Instead, there was something far worse: an unnerving silence. The Krolk, once so sure of their position, were now on edge. They had no idea what was coming, but they could feel it: the creeping dread of an unstoppable force gathering momentum. The quiet, calculating intensity of Earth's preparation was far more terrifying than any fleet could ever be. And as the galaxy's diplomatic council watched in stunned silence, They realized one undeniable truth. Earth was not going to back down. They were preparing for something bigger, something the galaxy wasn't ready for. And with each passing day, the dread grew. Every passing moment brought the galaxy closer to a reckoning they could not avoid. The galaxy now understood. Humanity had just begun to show its true power, and the Krolk were about to find out just how dangerous an underestimated species could be. The Krolk still believed that Earth was far too small, far too weak to be a serious threat. They thought they had brushed aside the death of Commander Elena Hayes, thinking humanity would bow to their superior technology. What the Krolk failed to realize, however, was that Earth had been quietly preparing for this moment, preparing for something much bigger than anyone could have imagined. The death of one diplomat had sparked a fire that was now burning out of control, and the Krolk had no idea what was coming. Earth's military, long considered outdated by the rest of the galaxy, began to show its true potential. For years, the world's governments had been pooling resources, quietly refining their military capabilities in ways the Krolk never noticed. What was once considered primitive, old technology was now being reimagined. Human ingenuity had taken center stage, and Earth's defense forces were unveiling weapons that made the Krolk's mighty ships and weapons look like toys. The first of these new technologies was an energy-based shield, one that could absorb and redirect energy blasts in a way that the Krolk had never encountered. It could render entire fleets of ships virtually invulnerable to attack, an impenetrable barrier that only humans had perfected. Alongside this, Earth's engineers had developed gravity-altering bombs capable of manipulating the gravitational pull around them. These bombs could render entire areas of a planet's surface useless, shifting gravity so that nothing could stand or operate without complete chaos. The Krolk had no idea how to defend against these new weapons, and that, in itself, was their greatest mistake. The world itself became a hive of activity. Factories hummed non-stop, churning out ships, armor, and weapons at an unimaginable scale. Research labs once hidden away now operated at full capacity, with Earth's best minds working. Together across borders and time zones, their efforts combined in a way that had never been seen before. Military bases, which had once been small and easily overlooked by the rest of the galaxy, now stood like giants, brimming with activity and readiness. Every nation, from the largest to the smallest, contributed to the effort. Earth's unity, once considered fractured and weak, was now its greatest strength. It was a force that the Krolk had completely underestimated. At the same time, Earth's intelligence agencies were hard at work, infiltrating every corner of Krolk's infrastructure. Humans had long been masters of intelligence and espionage, and now they turned these skills to the task of dismantling Krolk's defenses from the inside. Spies, hackers, and operatives worked in the shadows, planting listening devices, hacking, communications, and cracking into Krolk's most secure networks. Slowly but surely, they uncovered the Krolk's secrets, their vulnerabilities, their weak points, and the cracks in their otherwise formidable empire. The Krolk had assumed that their systems were airtight, that their superiority would keep any secrets hidden. But they were wrong. Earth's intelligence community, united in purpose, pulled apart the Krolk's technological empire piece by piece. As the weeks passed, the Krolk began to realize something was wrong. They noticed strange anomalies in their systems, communications, delayed, security breaches that could not be explained, vital information leaking from their most protected channels. They began to panic, trying to find the source of these intrusions, but it was already too late. Earth's operatives had done their work too well. The Krolk were now blind, and the human forces were ready to strike. The Krolk, in their arrogance, had believed they could kill one human and go unchallenged. But now, they faced a reality they could no longer ignore. They had awakened a force that had been lying in wait, preparing for the perfect moment to strike. It was a force they could neither understand nor stop. The humans were no longer just a weak species on the edge of the galaxy. They were a rising power, armed with weapons and intelligence the Krolk had never imagined. The storm that was about to hit them was not just a fleet of ships. It was a rising tide of human determination, backed by the full might of a species that had learned to survive against all odds. The Krolk were starting to realize the true cost of their mistake. But the awakening had already begun, and the wheels of humanity's response were now in motion. There was no turning back. The galaxy would soon know that Earth had not just come to avenge one life. It had come to redefine the balance of power forever. The Krolk had long believed themselves to be untouchable, and when they wiped out one human diplomat, they had assumed it would be the end of the matter. But they had never anticipated what was about to unfold. For the first time, the Krolk realized the full scope of their mistake. They had underestimated not just Earth's power, but its very nature. Humans were not merely fighters. They were innovators, tacticians, and masters of adaptation. And now, they had begun to unleash a strategy that was shaking the Krolk to their core. It began with the smallest, most unremarkable acts, things that would have gone unnoticed if not for the growing pattern. Across the Krolk system, seemingly, ordinary citizens began to vanish. In their place, human saboteurs, carefully trained and expertly disguised, infiltrated the Krolk's infrastructure. These saboteurs were not soldiers, nor were they warriors. They were ghosts. With precision and subtlety, they disabled the Krolk's ships, not through brute force, but through carefully executed sabotage that left no trace. Communication relays, once thought to be impenetrable, were dismantled and destroyed without a single shot being fired. Systems that the Krolk relied on for their dominance were now slowly, methodically being crippled. But it wasn't just technology that was being dismantled. Human operatives, working from the shadows, began manipulating local governments in the Krolk's territories. They sowed seeds of chaos, turning allies against each other, undermining the very foundation of Krolk society. The Krolk, who had once thought of humans as a simple, insignificant species, now found themselves facing an enemy who was not just attacking them physically, but attacking their entire way of life. Political leaders who once swore allegiance to the Krolk found themselves in disarray, unable to respond to the mysterious forces working against them. Trust within their own ranks began to fracture, and the Krolk's once united empire was now unraveling from the inside out. It was a campaign so subtle, so well coordinated, that the Krolk could not pinpoint who was behind it. They had never seen an enemy who fought like this, an enemy who didn't just attack from the front, but who understood the deeper, more dangerous art of psychological warfare. For the first time, they began to see humans as something far more terrifying than they had ever imagined. These were not mere pawns to be crushed. They were a force of nature, unstoppable and relentless. The Krolk had been fooled by their own superiority, believing that their technology alone made them invincible. But now, they realized they were facing a species that had mastered the art of being everywhere, of influencing every part of their empire, no matter how hidden or well protected. With each passing day, the Krolk felt their grip on power weaken. Ships once believed to be invulnerable were disabled without warning. Communication channels, vital for coordinating their efforts across the galaxy, were disrupted, leaving the Krolk isolated and vulnerable. They scrambled to identify the source of the attacks, but no matter how hard they searched, they could find no clear answer. It was as if the humans had melted into the very fabric of the galaxy, moving like shadows, striking at their most critical vulnerabilities, and then disappearing before anyone could react. The Krolk began to understand that they were not just fighting against an enemy, they were fighting against a mind, a collective intelligence that could outthink and outmaneuver them at every turn. Earth had made a conscious decision not to confront the Krolk directly, but to dismantle them piece by piece, in a way that would leave them with nothing. And as the Krolk's empire began to crumble under the weight of this unseen assault, something else was happening. The galaxy itself was watching. News of the Croak's struggle began to spread, slowly at first, but then with increasing speed. Alien species, once loyal to the Croak, began to question their alliances. The Croak had always been the dominant power, but now they were struggling, and the galaxy was starting to wonder. How could a supposedly primitive species like humanity bring a galaxy-spanning empire to its knees? The Croak's once unquestioned superiority was now in doubt, and Earth, once seen as weak and insignificant, was now a symbol of unseen strength. The Croak were no longer the hunters. They had become the prey. And as the attacks continued, the full force of humanity's hidden strength began to reveal itself, making one thing clear. The Croak had made a deadly mistake in underestimating Earth. Now, they would face the consequences. The storm was no longer a whisper on the wind. It was a roaring tempest, and the galaxy was about to see just how terrifying a species could be when it was pushed too far. The Croak Supreme Council, once so confident in their superiority, now found themselves cornered. Their empire, once a symbol of unmatched power, was crumbling under the relentless tide of human ingenuity. Desperation had set in, and the Croak realized that their technology, their vast fleets, and their political alliances were no match for Earth's unyielding resolve. In a last-ditch effort to save face, the Supreme Council decided to attempt a negotiation. They weren't just offering an apology anymore, they were offering surrender. They believed this would be enough to stop the bloodshed, to restore some semblance of control. They were wrong. Earth's response was swift and merciless. General Marcus Lowell, a seasoned leader who had become the voice of Earth's military resolve, stood at the head of the diplomatic envoy sent to meet with the Croak. The Croak had expected him to accept their apology to bargain for peace, but humanity wasn't interested in peace under the Croak's terms. Lowell's words, simple yet full of finality, cut through the air like a blade. "We don't want your apology," he said, his voice steady and unwavering. "We want your capitulation." The Croak were stunned. They couldn't understand how humans had come so far in such a short time. Earth had no desire to settle for a small victory or a mere promise of peace. They wanted the total surrender of the Croak, the complete dismantling of the empire that had once looked down on them. It was a demand the Croak couldn't fathom. For a moment, they thought perhaps they could buy time. Perhaps they could still find a way out. So, in a final act of defiance, they sent their fleets to confront Earth's forces, convinced that their ships, their superior numbers, would force humanity to retreat. But the Croak had gravely underestimated Earth's military capabilities. What they didn't realize was that Earth had been preparing for this moment not just with weapons, but with strategy. And strategy was a weapon the Croak had never understood. While the Croak fleets approached with their might, ready to crush what they thought were Earth's feeble defenses, they soon found themselves caught in a trap they couldn't escape. Earth's military tactics, built on years of training and the unity of a world now working as one, were a force unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. The Croak attempted to use their size and firepower, but Earth's forces were already prepared, already anticipating their moves. The battle was not fought with overwhelming strength. It was fought with precision. Earth's ships, equipped with advanced energy shields and gravity-altering technology, moved with a speed and maneuverability that left the Croak reeling. Their fleets, once thought to be invincible, were picked apart with surgical accuracy. In just a few weeks, the Croak found their ships disabled, their fleets crippled, and their defensive strategies shattered. They had never seen an enemy like this, one that knew exactly how to exploit every weakness, how to strike where they least expected. What the Croak hadn't counted on was the complete unity of the human people. It wasn't just their military might. It was the unbreakable will that came from a species that had been fighting for survival on Earth for centuries. From the smallest nation to the largest, from every corner of the globe, humanity stood together as one. This wasn't just a military conflict, it was a fight for justice, for the very soul of humanity. The Croak couldn't understand the depth of this resolve, nor could they see how it was driving the destruction of their once mighty fleets. The result was devastating. Croak fleets, sent to strike fear into Earth's forces, were instead decimated, with chilling efficiency. The Croak were left reeling, unable to stop the tide that was now overwhelming them. Their technology, once thought to be the pinnacle of the galaxy, was useless against Earth's tactics. And as their fleets were either destroyed or incapacitated, the Croak's sense of superiority began to shatter completely. The Supreme Council's attempt to buy time, to salvage their dignity, had failed. They now realized, too late, that Earth wasn't simply fighting for peace or revenge, it was fighting for total victory. Earth was no longer just defending its own, it was dismantling an empire that had thought itself untouchable. The Croak had pushed too far, and now they would face the consequences of underestimating a species that had, for too long, been underestimated itself. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the Croak fleets were systematically dismantled. For the first time, the Croak knew fear. They had no answer to Earth's power, and the galaxy knew that the balance of power had shifted forever. Earth was not just a force to be reckoned with, it was a force that had come to reshape the galaxy. It felt that Earth's momentum was undeniable now. What began as a small, calculated strike for justice had grown into a force so overwhelming that even the Croak, in their arrogance, could no longer deny it. The humans had not only fought back, they had become a torrent, sweeping through the galaxy with relentless precision. Earth's military strategy, which had once been rooted in conventional tactics, was now evolving in ways the galaxy had never anticipated. It wasn't just about firepower anymore. Earth was using something far more devastating: psychological warfare. The Croak, who had once believed themselves to be invincible, were now facing an enemy that didn't just fight, it outthought them, at every turn. Earth's forces, led by General Marcus Lowell, didn't storm the Croak homeworld with sheer brute force. Instead, they used their technological superiority and brilliant tactics to bypass the Croak's advanced planetary defenses. The Croak were caught completely off guard when Earth's ships, equipped with technology they couldn't understand, silently slipped through their defense grid. There were no large battleships appearing on the horizon, no warning shots to signal an invasion. Just the sudden, quiet disappearance of Earth's forces into the heart of the Croak system. The Croak had no time to react before Earth's forces struck directly at the core of their empire. With each successful mission, Earth's forces grew bolder, more efficient, and the Croak grew weaker. They were losing the war without ever truly facing the full might of humanity's military. The humans were attacking their systems, their infrastructure, their very sense of security. The Croak's fleets, crippled and scattered, were unable to defend their homeworld, unable to rally their remaining resources. Each act of resistance was met with more cunning and precision, further exposing the Croak's vulnerability. Earth's military wasn't just overcoming the Croak, it was breaking their will to fight. Meanwhile, President Martha Grayson stood at the podium, addressing the galaxy. Her words, calm and measured, carried the weight of an entire planet's resolve. She spoke not just of revenge, but of something far greater, a warning to the entire galaxy. This is not just about one life. This is about showing that we will not be underestimated. We will never be underestimated again. The simplicity of her words was what made them so chilling. Earth's actions weren't driven by the need to destroy the Croak. They were driven by the need to send a message, to make sure the galaxy understood that no one, not even the most powerful species, could dismiss humanity's strength. The Croak, who had once believed their technology and military might made them untouchable, now faced the crushing weight of humanity's resolve. As Earth's forces advanced on Croak's central command, it became clear to the galaxy that this wasn't a war. It was a revolution, a complete restructuring of the balance of power. The Croak had thought they could wipe out one human and go unchallenged. They had thought they could crush Earth under their heel and make an example of them. But now, Earth was doing the very thing they had once feared, not just defending itself, but making a statement that would echo across the galaxy for millennia to come. The message was clear, and as Earth's forces drew closer to their final objective, the capture of the Krolk's central command, tension gripped the galaxy. The Krolk had no way of knowing how much longer they could hold out, and the galaxy, for the first time, questioned their unquestionable dominance. The humans had already proven that they could outmaneuver the Krolk at every turn. They had proven that even without vast fleets or overwhelming numbers, they could bring down an empire. As Earth's forces closed in, the galaxy held its breath, waiting for the final act to unfold. There was no doubt now. Earth wasn't just fighting for survival, it was remaking the galaxy's understanding of power. And the Krolk, the once dominant force, were about to learn what happens when you misjudge your enemy. The storm was almost upon them. The human wrath, unstoppable and relentless, was about to reach its peak. The Krolk Empire, once the pinnacle of galactic power, was now teetering on the edge of collapse. Earth had pushed them to the brink, and the Krolk were left with no choice but to surrender or face utter destruction. But humanity, rather than delivering a fatal blow, chose a different path, one that would resonate across the galaxy for centuries to come. Earth had made its statement, and now it would make its final move. Instead of annihilating the Krolk, which many across the galaxy had expected, humanity did something far more profound. Earth took control, not with annihilation, but with dominance. The Krolk leadership, once so proud and confident in their superiority, now found themselves imprisoned. The very leaders who had thought they could crush Earth with a single act of violence were now at the mercy of their former prey. Earth's forces stormed Krolk's capital, the very heart of their empire, and forced them into submission. The Krolk were made to witness their empire's humbling transformation as humanity took control of their central command and their political structures. The once feared Krolk were now at the mercy of a species they had so arrogantly dismissed. The message was clear. This was humanity's galaxy now, and no one, no matter how powerful, would ever forget that. With the Krolk leaders in chains and their empire reduced to a shadow of its former self, Earth stood victorious. But this wasn't a victory born of conquest alone. It was a victory that would shape the course of history. Earth now held unprecedented leverage in galactic diplomacy. No longer would humans be dismissed as weak or insignificant. No longer would they be considered an afterthought in the grand schemes of the galaxy's power players. Earth had proven that it would never again allow itself to be underestimated. In the final moments of the war, as Krolk's capital fell under Earth's control, President Martha Grayson stood once more before the galaxy. Her voice, steady and powerful, carried across the stars. "Humanity is no longer a passive player in the galaxy," she declared. "We will lead, we will innovate, and we will control our own fate." The words were simple, but their weight was immeasurable. Earth had broken free of the chains of submission, and now it would forge its own path. No longer would humans be mere pawns in the vast, indifferent chessboard of the galaxy. They would lead. Across the galaxy, every species, every empire, and every leader who had once dismissed humanity now found themselves watching in stunned silence. The Krolk had fallen, not through brute force or overwhelming numbers, but because they had failed to see the true power of human resolve. The galaxy, once filled with skepticism and disdain toward Earth, now stood in awe of its newfound strength and ambition. The final scene unfolded as Earth's influence began to spread like a wave reaching farther than anyone could have imagined. Humanity's reputation was no longer one of weakness or insignificance. It was now a reputation of unshakable strength, of intelligence, and of unwavering will. Earth had not only avenged one life, but had reshaped the balance of power in the galaxy. The message had been sent. No one, not even the most powerful species in the galaxy, could afford to underestimate humanity again. And so, the galaxy would never be the same. Earth had proven that a single act of injustice could be the spark that ignited a new era, one where humanity would no longer be at the mercy of others. The Krolk had learned their lesson the hard way, and the rest of the galaxy knew now that humans would never allow such a thing to happen again. No one would dare to kill another human without facing the full weight of humanity's wrath. As Earth began to solidify its newfound power, the galaxy held its collective breath. The Krolk, humbled and broken, could only watch as humanity spread, its influence far and wide, leading a charge that would never be stopped. The balance of power had shifted, and as Earth looked to the stars, it was clear this was only the beginning.